Hello and welcome to a Word Power Nugget, an outreach of Agape Word Online and Jerry Williams Ministries. I'm Jerry Williams, and beloved, today's nugget comes from the book of Romans chapter 13, verses 1 and 2. I'm reading to you out of the New King James Version of the Bible. Let every soul be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God. And the authorities that exist are appointed by God. Therefore, whoever resists the authority resists the ordinance of God. And those who resist will bring judgment on themselves. The subject for our nugget today is godly authority. Godly authority. Let me begin with a question. Are there times when we should not submit to the government? We should never allow the government to force us to disobey God. Jesus and his apostles never disobeyed the government for personal reasons. When they disobeyed, it was in order to follow their higher loyalty to God. Now, first of all, the verses we just read in Romans chapter 13, verse 1 and 2, these verses do not mean that God approves everything the higher powers do. No, he doesn't. Sometimes God's attitude toward them is like that he had toward Pharaoh when the scripture says to Pharaoh, for this very purpose, I have raised you up that I may show my power in you and that my name may be declared in all the earth. And that's recorded in Romans chapter 9, verse 17. So, beloved, the scriptures clearly teach that believers are to be subject to higher powers. But is this possible in every situation? Is it possible in every situation? This is possible for a Christian, a Christ follower, even though the higher powers requires something his or her conscience cannot agree with, because the believer can always choose to take whatever punishment the law prescribes. For example, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Dr. King taught us that an unjust law was no law at all. And he and his followers, without resistance, went to jail for protesting against unjust laws. We too must be ready to accept the consequences of not obeying unjust laws. Now, let me say this. Most Christians believe that we are to live in peace with the state as long as the state allows us to live by our biblical convictions. Earthly authority is ordained by God, but God is the ultimate authority. Sin against authority is sin against God himself. But to offend God's authority is an act of rebellion. So we must not confuse respecting God's authority with worshiping man or worshiping the state. God is the highest authority. When God speaks, men can live or they can die. It is always better to obey God than man or the state. The Bible declares that it is better to obey than sacrifice. Rebellion to God is like the sin of witchcraft. We are called to obey godly authority. Let me say it again. We are called to obey godly authority. And if you disobey, be willing to accept the consequences. Well, beloved, that's our nugget for today, godly authority. And I want you to be inspired, be edified, be encouraged, be empowered, and visit us. Drop me a note at Jerry Williams at agapeword.net. That's simple. Jerry Williams at agapeword.net. If the nuggets have been a blessing to you, just drop me a note of encouragement. And beloved, whatever you do, have a blessed day and have faith in God.